Hare Krishna. Question: is it the mercy of the Lord to be able to remember one's past lives? In the Bhagavatam, in the 5th canto, it is said that Jad Bharat, by the mercy of the Lord, was able to remember his past lives. So, you said in one of your answers that often it is not always due to good karma that one remembers past lives, because it causes psychological problems to people. So how do we understand this? Answer: in the Chitraketu section, the Bhagavatam states that Kahashapa Kahavara. Basically, it says that what is a blessing and what is a curse. It actually depends on context, it depends on perception, it depends on effect. So, the Prabhupada gives the example that actually getting a good birth, getting wealth, getting intellectual faculty, abilities, all these are result of, these can come from two ways. One is because of punya and the other is because of having done some bhakti in one's previous life. That's why one is born in Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe, as the Bhagavad Gita 6.41 states. So now, in one sense, these are blessings. But in Kunti Maharani also says, Janma Ishwara Shruta Shribhir Edaman Madaha Puman. That these, birth, learning, wealth and beauty, these can intoxicate a person, these can take away one's impetus to surrender to Krishna. So then what is the actual reality? Is it that they are blessings or they are curses? So at one level, it depends on perception, it depends on consequence. Now, if one uses them to go towards Krishna, then they become blessings. If one doesn't use them to go towards Krishna, rather, if one uses them to think that I can be independently happy and stays away from Krishna, then they become curses. So therefore, what we should focus on is that what is the effect. So in the case of Bharat Maharaj, when in his future lives he remembered his past lives, that sobered him and that made him realize that actually he was a spiritualist and he had got deviated, and that enabled him to move onwards towards Krishna. So now in the cases of the stories which I talked about, for many children remembering their past lives, it does not lead to that sort of existential quest, that sort of search for God. So here another important difference is that actually if one has begun one's spiritual journey, then remembrance of the past life becomes a reminder of one's spiritual focus. But if one has not begun one's spiritual journey, then there is no anchor, no overall worldview within which to frame one's memory, place one's memories. And therefore, they just become an unusual quirk of life for most people. So we see that Bharat Maharaj, when Bharat Maharaj remembered the past life, was actually already a spiritualist. And this became something which was anukul for his bhakti. I had got deviated last time, I should not get deviated this time. So this was something which was anukul for his bhakti. So the important point is, that which is anukul, we accept it and we consider that as a blessing. So yes, that way we have in the Bhagavatam example of Gajendra, suddenly as an elephant, remembering the prayers that he had offered in his previous life as Maharaj Indradyumna. Now there is no explanation, description in the Bhagavatam whether Gajendra remembered his entire life as Indradyumna. But the fact that he was able to remember such choice poetry and he offered those prayerful verses and the Lord appeared. So that is definitely a blessing. So depending, if one uses one's past life recollections for becoming serious about the quest for eternal life, then definitely they are blessings. And that's what happened in the case of Bharat Maharaj. And in that case it's anukul. My point in the answer was simply that this is not necessarily, we should not make that a precondition for accepting the eternality of the soul. And we should not demand that because I don't remember my past lives, therefore I had no past lives. So that is, remembering one's past lives is not necessarily always an advantage. Although when one has a spiritual quest and when one uses those recollections to intensify one's spiritual quest, then definitely they can be a blessing. So we have to look at the time, place, circumstance. We have to look at, as I said, the context, the consequence, the perception, to determine whether the recollection of past life will be a blessing or not. In the case of children who have no well-formed worldview and who are just trying to take their first steps in this life, recollections of past life are often disruptive. And so when we have some sort of experiences coming from people in this life, then we also need to put them in the broader framework so that they are understandable according to Shastra. So Shastra says that yes, it is a blessing. So for Bharat Maharaj, because he had somehow got deviated from the spiritual path, the Lord wanted to teach him and through him teach us the dangers of getting deviated from the spiritual path, and that's why he gave him that memory. But in these particular cases, there is no direct spirituality involved, and it is not that the Lord is specially teaching these children something unless they are devotees, and there is no evidence of any of these children being devotees. The Lord is not teaching them anything specific. So in that sense, it's just a variant within the various factors of one's karma that determine whether some people remember and some people forget their past lives. So that way, the Lord's mercy is usually not a factor in ordinary recollections of one's previous lives. Although if somehow devotees can meet these children and then give them a proper worldly view, and then their recollection of their past life can become a further impetus for them to take to bhakti. Now there are many parents, not many, a few parents, but not just one or two, there are several that way, devotee parents who have reported their children, not even devotee parents, non-devotee parents. Indradanda Maharaj writes in one of his diaries how there was a girl who just came directly when he does his festivals in Poland. This is a girl who brought her mother and she went directly to the Jagannath temple and offered obeisances, prostrated obeisances over there. Her mother was surprised, and then her mother told Maharaj that she is, since her childhood, she is different from other children, and she would identified this deity as Jagannath, and this sort of thing happening, and she gives several other details which indicate that she remembered a past life as a devotee. So in this case, definitely it's favorable. So because it is, if something inspires one to come towards spirituality, towards Krishna, then definitely that can be seen as a blessing and that can take one towards Krishna. And other times you have to see according to the effect whether it has been positive or negative on the person. Then we'll have to see whether it exactly is blessing or it's just a variant in the way, in the incomprehensible ways in which karma acts. So I was talking from the socio-cultural perspective of children without any spiritual context getting suddenly past life memories, being quite a bit disruptive for their functioning. In fact, many times parents have to take the children to psychotherapists or psychologists who give some counseling, and then there are special branch of philosophy of psychotherapists called as past life regression therapists, hypnotic regression therapists. And often such counseling does help children to become peaceful. Otherwise, there are stories of, say, a child who was a boy named James Leininger, who was a fighter pilot, who was killed during the Second World War, and he would get attacks of panic and scream and scream and scream, and nothing stopped him. Nothing would stop him. His parents would be horrified to see the child screaming, and now he would be remembering how he was shot dead in his previous life. And he would remember how the plane had caught fire and how he was burning in that fire. And only after he was given vent to express his past life memories, and there's a whole book written about his book, The Boy Who Remembered His Past Life. James Leininger's parents have written the book along with a professional author. And then Carol Bowman is a hypnotic regression therapist. So she counseled him, and then after he spoke it out, his parents actually took him to the site in the Indian Ocean where the ship had, his plane had sunk, and after that he got a sense of release, and after that he became a normal child. So his parents were non-believers, and they were forced by the testimony of their own son's actions and his words to accept that he had a past life. So for them as well as for him, it was quite a traumatic experience to go through it. And when he became a normal child, in the sense that he released his past life, that's when they said that now our life became normal. So from the perspective of this life, it's not always a pleasant experience to remember one's past lives. And it's not that we as people in the devotee community or people in general should be wondering about our previous lives and hoping that we will remember our past lives, and that will become an impetus for us to practice spiritual life. We should make spiritual life practice dependent on recollections of the past life, because recollections are neither necessary nor are they sufficient, nor are they always very pleasant. Thank you.